Hello and welcome to the town hall for Smart Gamer Live. With me today is Malice and
You were
Poison
doing it how
Taco
long?
again.
You almost forgot?
Hey, I've got several drinks in front of me, alright? This is my day to drink. Gosh, every day you see, this is a thing, Malice. You throw me off when it comes to town hall and all this stuff. Hey, Bobo. And so when we get onto the MMO grind, it's my job to throw you off by not giving you a countdown or various other things. So, anyway, one of the conversations I had today with somebody within the greater Smart Gamer community was that of vanilla content. Specifically, the conversation was centered around mods and whatnot, and what that did to games, and then we kind of got into the whole conversation of with expansions, some of the older content kind of just falls to waste. How do we keep that content relevant? Should developers keep this content relevant? Is it necessary for the game? Do you like games where you get in and it's like, okay, click, I've now bypassed, if we take CU for instance, in 3 years I can go click, I'm going to bypass 7, 8, 9 years of development work in content because screw you all. Is
Well,
that is that kind of stuff you like?
you've been playing Guild Wars 2 lately, haven't you?
Yeah, but I still have to go through all that old content if I want my hero points in that game.
Well, exactly. There you go. There's your vanilla content put into use.
And it's not necessarily
Well,
easy either, which is the fun thing. Anyway, sorry, Mouse, go.
that's something that Guild Wars 2 actually did very well, is the fact that since their zones scale, your content is always at least a relative level of challenge. Whereas other games, you go into a zone and it's the level 10 zone and you're level 242 and you're just like, wall smash, like, so that's the one of the things that Guild Wars 2 did well. As far as that content, that vanilla content, though, it was something that I screamed about for years in World of Warcraft was the waste of these zones that just sat there. They
Yeah.
didn't do anything. And from a community standpoint, the hardest part is really to get new players into games when all of the vanilla content that they have to start in, they start off, they start playing through, there's nobody there. There's no reason for you to go back to help them other than on the goodness of your own heart. And so it becomes very difficult to bring new players into a game. It's all about that barrier of entry to bring new players in. If you don't play a game within the first 6 months of its launch, you're going to be walking in the land of crickets, and that sucks.
So, do you think it's better for a community standpoint to have a game that, if they're going to negate all of their old vanilla content and allow you to jump forward and skip it, or a game that forces, like Guild Wars 2, where you have level scaling so that you actually are able to play with those people that are jumping into the game for the first time, say, 12 years later or whatever the heck it is?
Well, I think from a development standpoint, it's better to reuse the content and have that as a point of access, because why ever get rid of content that you created? I mean, you could change it, modify it, do things like that, run events in it, but why waste that content? I mean, if you have all of these zones and you're running server power to them, you might as well put them to use. And skipping them just means that you are throwing away content and in lieu of other content. Well, to me, you should just want more content as opposed to different content only. That's the problem with doing the skip, is that you're getting rid of old content. Well, so you may only have the same amount of content, it's just different content. It's better to have just more, in my book.
It's like when Dark Age of Camelot came out and you could go to your, what was it, the Necro Clash. You had a whole different zone that you could basically start in, and you basically skipped all that older stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then they also started doing, because they were trying to do a lot of the realm balance. So you'd get, oh, you could be an instant level 30 in this if you switch to this realm or whatever. Yeah.
Bubba says, I know there's a few games that encouraged old players to play in noob zones to help them out. Also, a good way for a guild to recruit new members, a good way to keep the old content useful. That's kind of a whole other can of worms, and something that I'm not a huge fan of is you go into some of the older zones nowadays that you've got all these new players in, and yes, you have people that are recruiting for guilds, but it's just spam.
Well, right. What you want, realistically, from a development standpoint, is to create content, quest lines, and things like that that are dragging top level players through those zones. And if they're being dragged through those zones, then go, oh, hey, I can help you with that. I'm right here. As opposed to, I got to fly for 25 minutes trying to get over after I recall to this location just to get out to you. Now I'm actually in the area on my own volition, and therefore it's a lot easier on a personal level to recruit because now I'm going to help you out with your quest or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing this epic quest in the area anyway, and so I'm triggering this and doing this and whatever. And this guy's like battling the boar that you did at level like 37 or whatever like that. You're like, lol. And he dies. You're like, okay, man, I can help you since clearly you can't do it. So,
Also, there's something to be said that when you're a brand new player in a game and you see like a high level player like all decked out and you see that and you're like, hey, I want that. I want to be that.
Things to aspire to.
It's just another hook to keep you playing.
Just going to hang out by Hogger and let you get a hit off and then kill it for you. That's all we're going to do.
But coming more heavily from an FPS background, it's like, in shooters and everything, you can add as much content as you want, but if there's a classic map, people will play that until the end of days. You've got Wake Island and Battlefield has a number of them. You got Wake Island, you got Operation Locker, you've got is it Kraken or Karkand? Yes, Karkand from Battlefield 2. If there's a good map, people will play it and play it and play it and play it. So for an MMO standpoint, if you have like a good core content, people will play it. Maybe it's from the perspective of maybe MMO designers aren't thinking of content being permanent, maybe because they're looking at it from the perspective of an RPG. When you play an RPG, you play through an area, and once you're done, you have no reason to really go back there, unless there's like the odd side quest that takes you back there.
Malice, let me ask you a question from a game design development standpoint. When you create a newbie area or a vanilla zone, you're creating it based on tell me if I'm wrong when I'm done here. You're creating it with the technology that you've got and the mechanics that are built into the game at the time that's created in mind. And then as you're developing the game and creating these new zones, obviously your technology, it could be advancing, or you're dealing with mods in some games. And so you're creating these zones with the idea that, okay, there's this new stuff that's going to ultimately affect this zone to make it harder. Is that backwards compatible? Is that an issue?
From a technology standpoint, usually what you do is you'll actually develop all of the zones. Okay, we're gonna start the game off with 50 zones. You basically start developing 50 zones. They're about 50% complete. Then people come through and they go, all right, the next month we're working on this. You're gonna go from this section to this section to this section to this section, and update it. Bring it up to this, bring it up to this. And you're constantly bumping up all of those zones by percentages until you're 95% complete, 100% complete.
But do developers actually go back to this older content? Like, say, if we take WoW, for instance, when Burning Crusade came out.
Are you talking? Okay, so you're talking
right.
Post-live. Okay.
Post-live and post-expansion. So if we've got an expansion that comes out and there's, new thinking as far as game mechanics and that kind of stuff, do they retro that back? Could that potential, if they don't, does that lend to the fact that these older zones are
Well, I will say that's WoW sort of touched on this, and I really think that it's a it's a good way of thinking. They did it way later than they ever should have, but like the whole, I forget even what the expansion was, where it was basically the apocalypse or whatever like that.
Cataclysm.
Yeah, Cataclysm. That's it. Cataclysm actually went in and touched a lot of old zones and ripped them up, and
That was really
did
cool.
a lot of content like that. That is good, and I think that that's something that should be played with. And honestly, they did a lot of cool stuff with gating and doing phasing and a lot of other stuff like that too, where me as a high level, I saw the world one way, but you as a low level saw the world a different way, which was also pretty cool. But yeah, I think that it is almost a requirement that you need to go in and take the old zones and stir them up. I mean, bring new technology, bring plots and stories, and make world events and things like that that impact the game. It's something that I really enjoyed in, even as far back as like Astronaut's Call. They would take, so all the high levels, of course, would be out in the Dire Lands, warring in the dungeons out there and farming and everything like that. But if you wanted to be comfortable, you hung out in the old zones still. So the old cities tended to still have high-level players hanging out and doing stuff. That being said, they would also then have plots and storylines and live events and all that stuff only happening out in the kind of the noob areas. So that's where the excitement was always kind of drawn back to. It's like, obviously you want to go to the high levels, that we don't need to motivate you to go do that. So all of the cool live content and whatnot was then done in the lower zones, so that it always kept people interested and involved in the lower zones, which I personally think was fantastic.
Keep them updated too. Yep, Bobo. Skippy says, what about Guild Wars 2 and the way it encourages you to unlock every area with rewards?
Yep, been there, done that. I got that title.
Yep.
I didn't realize there was a title with that. Sorry, I'm just getting into Guild Wars 2. I'm a little late on the uptake here, but...
it is a requirement to get a legendary weapon that you have to get 100% on all the zones. And I believe that's all the vanilla zones, not the expansions don't count. And when you do complete it, you get the title, been there, done that.
Gotcha. That's kind of a lame title.
But you gotta do all the jump puzzles and all the, all the jump puzzles.
I don't think it's all the jump puzzles. It's just all the points of interest, all the hearts, all the...
Nope, you had to do all the jump puzzles, I assure you.
So Malice, do you have this title? He's like, no, I had a Mesmer port me through all the damn jump puzzles. So chat question for you. What are your favorite games as far as vanilla content? And then is that constant, do you feel that content is still relevant if you're continuing to play that game today? And Malice, I'll toss that question to you. Out of all the games that you've played, whether they're PvP based or PvE based or whatever the heck they are, and this could be the same for FPSs, which one do you feel had the best vanilla content, and do you feel that content is still relevant today?
I would say that just from a development concept, I think Guild Wars 2 probably did the best job in always making their early zones relevant. Because a lot of the new zones are very exploratory. They're designed for you to go in there and fight and then leave. They don't really want you... Unlike WoW, where every time they put out an expansion, they put out some new major city and it was a new hub and it drew all the players to it and they didn't need to go back. Like, Guild Wars 2 didn't do that. They went in and they okay, we want you to go to these cities that are back that we built originally. There's no need to build new cities. Here's content to go explore, and you're going to want to do it, but you always have fallback, and you're always moving back to those places, which is the same hubs that the lower level players are stumbling into. So again, you're in the same places at the same times. So at least, as Poison Taco mentioned, you're going to walk past players who are all decked out in the nicest gear and the costumes and everything like that. And you're like, I want to be like that guy. So it motivates players to keep involved and keep moving forward. And also is simply a location where they can go, hey, can anybody help me? I'm kind of screwed or stuck. And there's tons of high-level people that could potentially help them. So,
Taco, what has got the best early on content?
Star Wars Galaxies. Is it relevant? No, because it's dead. I really enjoyed Star Wars Galaxies before they added levels, before they added classes, and when they had.
But it was still Star Wars Galaxies. Instead of Star Wars, we want to be WoW.
Because since Star Wars Galaxies didn't have levels, it had professions. You had people all the time that were like, you know what, I want to change professions. I don't want to be a rifle guy anymore. I want to be a sword guy and go beat people up. So you're going to drop rifle and pick up your new skill, which you're going to start at the beginning. You're going to start as a novice brawler and work your way up. You could be a veteran player for all anyone cared, but you would still be starting just like any newbie. Maybe you have a little bit more knowledge, but you're there. And that content was always relevant because, well, people were building cities. People had their houses up and everything. There was always... The game kind of had its own life. It wasn't this carrot at the end of the stick pulling you towards the end. Because it was more of a sandbox MMO, it's like you are a person in this Star Wars game. Go do your thing. And then, of course, when they added expansions, the first expansion was Jump to Lightspeed. Well, it didn't really draw people into the expanded content. It was like it was a companion to it. It enhanced every part of the game because not only did you have people because before they added Jump to Lightspeed, the only way to go to planets was to go to the spaceport, buy a ticket, wait for the shuttle to come in. Once they added Jump to Lightspeed, you could take your own damn self from planet to planet. And then, of course, you have the new professions like, now that you have spaceships, you have people that can build spaceships for you and all the parts associated with it.
That's the true value of the sandbox style is that it does. There are no, and because, as you said, Galaxies was levelless, content really was. You quested after things because they held an intrinsic value, not because you needed to go find the level 20 to 30 zone and go kill mobs in that zone. You were just like, oh, I need leather. There are fields of deer in this zone or on this planet, and I'm going to go do it and kill them because I'm going to check their leather quality because I need high quality leather. Oh, these guys don't have good ones. Let me hop to another planet or another area and search for quality. Okay, cool. I can farm these guys. Or, hey, guys, let's get a group together and go attack the Crate Dragon or the witches or do something like that.
But see, I feel like, if we jump to like WoW or something like that, I mean, I was with a group that we would go to zones because we liked those zones better and because they were the level 20 to 30 zone and we were within level 20 to 30. It had nothing to do with any intrinsic value of things that were in the zone. It was just we needed to kill a bunch of crap. I mean, if you look at...
because you were leveling.
Right. If you look at Dark Age of Camelot, how many times did you spend out fighting Centurions in the grind zone if you're Albion, and I don't know what the other races were.
The other aspect to that is in Star Wars Galaxies, it didn't have as many quests as, say, World of Warcraft, but the quest lines that were there were for valuable things. For example, there was this Heroes quest on Tatooine. It would literally take you all over the planet on Tatooine. It was a very difficult quest to actually complete. But when you got it, you got this ring that you could equip that you could use it once every 24 hours. It could actually revive you if you were killed in combat. So, I mean, like that's a valuable thing.
Yeah.
then there was also the theme parks that were, people called them. So you had the theme park for the Rebel Alliance, you had the theme park for the Empire, then you had Jabba's Palace, and there's a few others scattered around. And you didn't necessarily do those quest lines because you needed to level up. You did them because the end of those quest lines would give you something fancy, like something to put in your house, something to wear, something to do whatever. Maybe you got a title out of it. Maybe you just want to say, oh, hey, I'm BFFs with Darth Vader because I did a fetch quest for him. And, there's
But I think
things to kinda...
devolving into ignoring the elephant in the room, which is it's all about how you design your leveling schema. Are you actually doing a 1 through 70 or 80 or 60 or 50 or whatever your leveling schema is, and you're doing zones in blocks, and then you're just kind of plodding forward because you need to go to the next zone to get the mobs that will allow you to continue to get XP? Or are you doing a kind of sandbox level list system where I can hang out in this on Naboo and technically never leave? There's always something to go do. I only go other places because I want to explore, because I want to find the exciting thing, or I heard that there's an awesome loot drop if I do something on Tatooine or whatever. So I think it really just comes down to how you do your leveling schema, is whether you're leaving dead zones behind. Dark Age of Camelot left shitloads of dead zones, like to the point once you were max level, there was almost no reason to experience the past game.
And maybe that's something developers need to start to learn. Like, stop leaving dead content, because look, MMOs are by far not cheap to make. They're even harder now. It's such a risk. So, I mean, if you're going to make content that lasts, because if someone's going to go through it in 20 minutes or an hour or whatever, what's the point? You're going to spend so much time building that, and someone's going to look by and say, oh, that's a cool city. Bye.
Tens of thousands of man hours to build a zone, to have a dude literally be like, yep, was here for an hour and a half, I'm out.
Skippy brought up a game, SWTOR. That's a game where if you want to go through some of the earlier content, you've got an incredible amount of story that can still be relevant if you're playing the game for story. You've got many, many, many different characters that all have. However, you can basically raffle stomp the entire zone in a matter of minutes because it's just too easy. Now, if they did a level scale with it to make this thing actually a little bit more difficult, I don't know that would really help that situation, because you're going only for the character story. All the other content within the zone, you don't care about. Once you've played through it, you've played through it. There's no rewarding reason to you, back to Malice's comment of the intrinsic value of things. There's no rewarding reason to go back and do that except for that initial storyline.
That being said, the one exception, I think, is when they do Terrace and Balmora, because those planets are different depending on what faction you're on.
Yeah.
And you do them at different times. For example, if you're Republic, you go through Terrace, you're basically building up with the storyline just for the Empire to come tear it down when in their storylines, and then of course it's reversed.
But once you're through it, you're through it. There's no reason to go back to it.
And I mean, occasionally a quest will send you back to some of the old planets, but I mean, it's just like a quest. For example, the Jedi Knight quest will send you back to Tython or back to Ord Mantell, and you'll see your level 10s.
But again, that's just the storyline. That has nothing to do with the zone content. So Roldan says, what about mixing high and low level / old and new content?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's something that, again, I'll bring Guild Wars 2 up as an example, that they blew up Lions Reach? Lions Arch?
Lions Arch.
Lions Arch. The Pirate City, they blew it up, turned it into a dungeon for months, and then all of a sudden they completed the storyline, and then they went through a whole rebuilding process, and you had to do quests and stuff to help rebuild it and do all this stuff, and it was a year-long trek through old content, and every level was involved in some way to restore this city and do all this other content, and that was great. That was, I think, games need to do that more, is shake up old zones and make them interesting and make everyone involved in them,
The amount of work that goes into that, I mean, ultimately, is that worth it for a game developer to do that, especially when we're kind of moving away from the idea of the almighty expansion and going towards the lesser, firework, okay, we're done, DLC.
I'm still waiting for someone to take the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor and put that into an MMO.
I would say that MMOs have always been a combination of the, as you refer to, the DLC and the expansion. Guild Wars 2 is a perfect example. They were giving away, there's constant big updates. They're constantly change in the game. That whole entire thing with Lion's Arch was just content. It wasn't an expansion or anything like that.
It was also dual purpose too.
Yeah, but they only put out 2 actual expansions for the game.
It's like, hey guys, Lion's Arch is a laggy piece of crap. Let's blow it up and rebuild it.
Would have liked to have been in that room. Guys, I got a great idea. Let's blow this place up.
That's a great way to do it.
Okay.
But recycling your content is technically not... It's not any more expensive than putting new zones in, and people always want new zones. But if you rehash old zones, you don't have to. First of all, you're not adding more content on your server, so you're not putting more and more content. And like you said, with tech, it allows you to, and as Poison Taco alluded to here with Lion's Arch, you now can use that tech to 5 years later, 3 years later, whatever, from launch and go, let us fix the problems we had in the zone by blowing it up and messing around with it and doing some other cool stuff with it. And now we can update all those zones all at the same time. So you're updating with technology. You're not taxing the server as much because you're not just putting out more zones and more zones. And you're not also putting in man hours to do every little blade of freaking grass in the damn game. Everything's pretty much done. You just need to tear up maybe this town or do this and add some NPCs, create some other content, maybe eliminate some quests. You can go in there and manipulate it without having to build it all from the ground up.
From a design developer standpoint, the idea of content meaning to be recycled right from the start. One of our chat people is saying, what if some content is designed right from the start to be recycled? Is that something developers do? Is that something they should probably do more of? Is that cost worthy to do for them? Easy? Hard? I don't know.
I mean, everything's easier if you plan for it.
Of course.
I mean, the problem is that in a way... So you always have to remember you're looking at a business model, and you're looking at a company that is high risk in its nature of being an MMO, and through its development schema, it may not want to waste that extra effort to make sure that the zone is recyclable, because that's future development. And future development may not happen because your game may crap out in 3 months and no one plays it anymore. Now you have all this future development you've spent lots of money on that doesn't exist and will never exist. So it becomes that balance of money where people are like, well, like technically if I had infinite amount of money and funding and time, we could do that. But in reality, most MMOs only have Hey, CU. Most MMOs only have a build cycle of about 5 years.
Well, one thing I found really interesting is
don't take
This
that personal
was-
or anything, Mark.
One thing I found really interesting was with the early development of EverQuest Next, which died, as well as Camelot Unchained, was the idea that players would be going out building the world. This kind of comes into a time when a game like Minecraft exists, and I think MMOs for the large part have been focused entirely on combat, where they were built on multiplayer RPG games, where you start off as your lowly swordsman, you're killing rats in a basement, and you work up to be the hero, the savior of the world. We now
literally
live,
built on MUDs, and
Yeah.
MUDs was walk from room to room, smash everything in room, move on.
yeah, and well, I mean, they're still based on the idea of the Dungeons and Dragons RPG. You're going to basically adventure, build up, level up, do all that kind of thing. But we've had people essentially grow up on Minecraft. They've had people grow up on the idea of building things and kind of going out in the world and being part of the world rather than being the hero.
So
And I think,
go ahead.
and I think there's some really cool ideas both in Camelot Unchained as well as EverQuest Next, and that they had the idea of it's the players that are going to go out and build the world. They're going to go build the towns, the buildings, and all that kind of thing, and they're going to go be part of the world. And I think New World is going to do a little bit of that, from my understanding as well. And I think
But the funny thing is, every MMO that has done that has failed epically.
well, that's probably because it's so hard to get right. It's
But
so
we're
hard to-
also noticing a trend, and I don't know, and Taco, you bring up a really good point. I don't know if this is because of games like Minecraft, which has created a generation of people that are used to basically building the world. We have a generation of games that are starting to come up. I mean, even look at Camelot Unchained. They're expecting us to build basically almost everything. You look at Chronicles of Valeria. The players are going to build essentially everything. All they've done with the game is build the framework
Right.
Mhm.
and the world. So,
Yet somehow it's taking them longer to develop those games than than games that are stuffed full of content.
well, I mean,
But mostly it's because of the idea that, like, for Camelot Unchained, for example, it's like what, a 60-man team or something like that.
well, and I think
Um,
if you're also looking at it, in an article that Crest forwarded me this week was about the devs of WoW talking about how they've created all these encounters and things, and players went into the API code and managed to pull out data and use it in a way that they never dreamed even would be possible to create these different add-ons for this stuff. So I'm wondering if some of these games that are counting on player creation, if they're taking more time on the front side to go, okay, what are all the different ways that our player base can brain fuck this stuff and get it done? Could that be another reason why it's taking so stinking long?
No, because you can always reactionarily resolve a lot of that. I mean, WoW did the exact same thing, that you had access to the API and Paladins were running a mod that allowed them to become immune to my class because I was playing a Warlock at the time, and I could change my elements. Like I was, Shadow and Fire or whatever like that, and throwing different effects, and they would just the mod would read the name of the spells that I was launching and determine that that was a shadow spell, and would automatically put up a shadow shield, then automatically flip to another shield, then automatically go back to a shadow shield, and could basically permanently block my attacks. Well, they went, that's bad. And they just went into, made the change, and they said, we're banning that mod and locking out that availability. You can evolve with those mods, It's
Right, but you're always going to get kickback. There's always going to be that point in time where you're putting off the warlocks who are playing, and they're like, "I'm done with this game because I can't get any. Everybody's blocking my shit." And da 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 da. If they're trying to prevent that,
someone is quitting in the perfect utopia.
exactly.
So never listen to people crying about quitting. No, I believe we all watched the movie The Matrix. We made the perfect utopia. 10% of the people wanted to rebel. Because that's how people are. There is no such thing as a happy person. Like, there's just people who are just you could basically blow sunshine up their ass from superpowers, and they'd be like, "Well, this game is completely broken because I am too powerful, and this is a bullshit." There's always someone to whine about every aspect of everything, and that is why I really think that most games are stopping running their own forums, because they're finding out that they're only listening to about 5% of the screaming, yowling morons out there who are just screaming about nothing into the wind, and they keep going, "Oh, there's a problem, we need to fix this," and not realizing that they're just screaming, yowling morons yelling into the wind.
I'll have you all know that we're only 36 minutes into the stream, and already he got up onto his soapbox. We're doing good.
Yep.
And he's not drinking.
But I mean,
Anything
people
alcohol.
will always be creative and come up with the weirdest shit. Like, I mean, the oldest one I can think of is the Renzook, if you guys know what that is.
Nope.
What? Nope.
This goes all the way back to Battlefield 1942, and this was a technique used in dogfighting where you would spawn in as the anti-tanks. You would have yourself a bazooka. You would get in a plane. You would basically do, if someone was on your 6, you would do a loop. And while you're in like this part of the loop, you would bail out of your plane so your character would keep going up. So then you look down and you fire your bazooka at the plane coming behind you. You blow him up, and then your plane completes the loop, and you come down and go back in your plane.
If you can pull it off, I give you props. So,
or you might get hit by the props. One of the two.
There's a guy. There's awesome videos out there of a guy in Battlefield 3 who basically pulls off the same thing with a jet, where he's like got a guy in his 6 and he's in his jet. So he bails out of his jet. The jet keeps going, but it stops. So he looks down, fires an RPG at the jet that's passing by. And then he does the same thing, but with a sniper rifle. Basically, he jumps out, shoots his sniper rifle at the other jet, headshots the guy in the cockpit. Hit the guy he just killed. His jet is still going on. He drops down and gets it back into it.
The stupid amount of skill that goes into something like that. I don't care if it's against the game. I don't care if it's an exploit. I mean, this is all I've got to say about it. If you can pull it off.
Sometimes it's skill. Sometimes it's luck. I mean, look, when I did that boarding action on the 890 jump last September that caused the big salt mine, I was among 4 other capital ships that exploded. I should have died. We somehow managed to sneak on their ship unnoticed. It's just the bold shit that people will do. It's like, give someone enough determination, and they will find a way to break the game and make something amazing happen.
And you're not wrong. Kind of shuffle it back to kind of the direction of the original subject, though. I just remembered that there is also a game that should be brought into note, maybe not as being successful with the goal, but I believe is a fantastic foundation that I think more games need to look at. I in fact, have the game that I have been working on, when I stumble onto a couple $1 million, you can actually, selfless plug of meaninglessness because it doesn't exist. So it's only exists as a document. But one of the things that I liked was in City of Heroes. City of Heroes had a really cool way of dealing with content in that you could have the town and there's mooks and whatever like that wandering around, but all your quests and your other stuff were all what were called door missions. An NPC would go, "Hey, we need this guy dead. He's over blah," and it would light up a door randomly on the map, and you would go there, and there was a randomly generated dungeon for you to go explore and kill the dude at the end. It's a great way to keep all of the action in a limited amount of zones. Sure, they ended up having higher and higher and higher level zones, which was where they kind of fell apart at that idea, but they could continuously even push those zones backwards if they wanted to and just keep reusing door missions, because all you gotta do is create a really good city that people can enjoy playing role play in, and add even a further roleplay element of, instead of having to go to quest givers, have quest people like run up to you, sir, I heard you could do this for me, can you help me out? And you can choose to take the mission or not, and these types of more spontaneous and semi-instanced content allows you to continuously reuse zones and allow players of all different levels to be constantly intermingled to keep those zones active.
Tell Sihaku what game you're talking about.
City of Heroes, or City of Villains, or the combination when they finally put them together.
All the best MMOs are dead.
Going back a little bit further to when we were talking about player-created content, there was a good question that came up. As far as I know, Camelot Unchained will have player-designable campaigns, which include quests, targets, and rewards.
That's not what you think it is. I think you're giving it too much credit. There is going to be a contract system that's basically going to be like, hey guys, I am Uber Guild. I don't have time to blow up the towers over there. My Zerg is going to be focusing on the Uber temple to the god of whatever that these guys built. It happens to look like a penis with a swastika built around it, because that's what every building in CU will look like.
Skippy.
And that's where the Zerg will be fighting. So a contract goes out. Hey, we need people, small guilds that are willing to go fight these towers and break them down while we focus on
or protect our crafters as we're bringing them in, or
right, or things like that. And so basically, they create a if you want to call it a quest, it's a job board. It's like instead of just hoping that people in your faction do their job, you're just creating a contract, and you're basically going, I want this content to be done. Go do this contract and complete it.
And the only reason that content, that specific contract may be in, if it's gathering, if it's stuff like that, is because, as Malice stated earlier, there's some intrinsic value to whatever it is that you're going out there for. If you're crafting and you need a bunch of wood that's from out there, then obviously there's some reason. Beyond that, I mean, who's ever going to be out there? It's just whatever mobs they put into the game. Okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
I got lost in chat.
Oh, that could be dangerous.
Yeah. I'll just let you talk while I drink more whiskey. How's
that? You make me very jealous about the lack of whiskey. Yeah, Bobo, the whole thing with Lord British was very amusing. But yeah, that's a perfect example. Even at Nashron's call, using the kind of the Lord British idea, they ran this 6-month-long story arc. It culminated in these. Basically, they organically created factions within the game. People just kind of broke off and became antis or PKers. That was like the terms for it. And antis still were PvPers. They just didn't gank people. They weren't like noob farming and stuff like that. They were generally nicer, slightly nicer. They put in a dungeon that was PvP. You had to be flagged PvP to go in. And they realized that in this dungeon, because the way that they did PvP, you had to go to this altar of Belzeron, which is the demon that would bless you with the murderous spirit to be the PvPer. Great. They found that his soul was actually in a crystal at the bottom of the dungeon. And once they figured out that was that, and they're like, it could be blown up, the antis prevented all the PKers from actually entering the dungeon. And they camped that thing for a month, that entrance, preventing players from going into the dungeon. And only one server successfully defended, and they brought a bunch of NPC demons that were supposed to be like these super god mode demons to show up to break him free. Well, they were like, okay. And they started this whole entire roleplay, and it was really cool. And then they're like, no. And the whole entire raid attacked the the demons, and they were supposed to be immune to all damage, and they weren't, and they all died. They had to respawn all the demons and come back because they were all dev controlled, and they're like, "We are now immune. We will take." It was like so kind of hokey, but like, yeah, you could. It's amazing what happens when things are live or when players get to just say, "Screw it, no, we're doing this. This is how things are going to work," and game developers in many ways need to always take that into account and accept the fact that the game is for the players and not for the developers. I find that that's one of the key ego problems in most game development is that games are developed because I want this to exist in this perfect way, and the player will enjoy the experience that I have forced them to.
Ragnarok.
Yeah. And
Excuse
that's just folly, because players will always make their content, no matter how on rails that game is. Players will always make that content,
and we will break it. We will break it so hard.
Never underestimate the players. AU says you were about to say nice things about Cube. Yes, Tuesday will be all Cube. Tuesday.
Cube.
We have Trev coming in. He's a special guest on MMO Grind. We're going to talk about building in Camelot Unchained. Sorry, Taco, go ahead.
The amount of exploits going on in ArcAge right now that Malice has been talking about are insane.
Right. It just made me quit the game. It's stupid.
Zaylin, you were talking about a loud minority will always be nagging about content, and that's what I said, that devs need to implement more ways to capture various statistics of player behavior to be independent from player feedback. 100% agree.
You would be
Most
surprised at
have metrics.
The level of data that is actually collected, but the problem is I don't know how many people here are football fans, but like you can look at a Jay Cutler, who was the quarterback for the Bears, and on paper he looked like an amazing quarterback. The problem is not how many turnovers he did. It was the fact that he'd always turn over the exact super point where it would make the game collapse. It would make sure that they would lose.
If you want a specific example, look up the economy demonstration that Cloud Imperium Games gave at CitizenCon last year, where they talk about how they're going to build their economy and the tools that they're doing. Because when they first show off the tools, they actually have a program they made for themselves where they can see like the blips on the star map of each individual player, not just on a server, but on every server. They can see where players are going, what they're doing, where they're dying, what they're transporting. They see it all.
Skippy, that alleyway that you like to ERP in, they know about it, just so you know.
Yep. And there's a lot of dots actually there in that area, so don't think you're alone.
Cresses around the wall. It's just anyway.
But we did the exact same thing in Warhammer. We had the exact same maps that tracked exactly that data. We knew where players most likely died in the maps, where they were doing content, where they were hanging out. All those things are tracked. It's what you do with them. It's what they mean. So as developers, myself and a couple of other fellow developers were strongly concerned about not specifically the singular power of the what they call the Bright Wizard, but because of the way that the game was designed, the faction allowed for a very strong combo that made the Bright Wizard, not my fucking made the Bright Wizard just extremely powerful, and really needed a nerf. But statistically, when we looked at the data, it's it said that they died at the same rate, did the same damage, killed the same rate as everybody else. There was nothing that in the data that said that this guy was somehow generating more kills than anything else. It didn't come out as overpowered by the data. But to this day, every person that I know of that talks about Warhammer, immediately the quickest way to shift that conversation is be like, Bright Wizard, and they all go, ooh. Like people I've never met before. They're just like, oh, yeah, Bright Wizards. Oh, OP as hell. If all the players think that.
You say Bright Wizard, I think Iron Breakers. Holy shit.
Well, that was the combo. You literally put the grudge function or whatever it was. Not the grudge. What was the reverse of that? They put it on their allies. So the Iron Breaker basically made the Bright Wizard unkillable, and then proceeded that the Bright Wizard would gain the whatever rage meter or whatever it was, so they could do the mass AoE stun, then do mass AoE spam damage, and they would just boom, 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 and just kill everybody. And it's like, okay. Whereas the mirror class, as it were, could only do roots. Well, players could still attack from roots. Roots would break. Stuns didn't break.
You know what would help with all this data collection? And this is my way of getting this lovely word into the stream, is more Linuxification.
Yeah.
Do you have to take a drink to that now every time you say it?
Yes.
That's the thing on the stream. Whenever anybody ever says that word, everybody in the CU stream will take a drink.
Yeah.
It's the CU drinking game.
So at the end of the day, it's, while I definitely understand, I'm not sure what more data they could be pulling. They pull tons of data, but just like anything, real life experience versus all the data you pull is just two different things. What are you clicking, sir?
I was trying to see if I can figure out how to allow AU to post this link that he wants to post.
Can you post a link?
I mean, I can.
Have PM it to you? I don't know.
Yeah, AU, if you PM me in Discord, I can get the link on. I will piss off the all-powerful Nightbot. This is a legitimate link that is on topic. We just don't allow links because then every spammer on the planet would be in here. So if you guys do have links that are relevant to topics that you want to post, please just send it over and we will get it posted. And that's a good point, AU. I'll make Taco a moderator so that he can post this stuff. But anyway, you were saying...
Actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's basically a heat map of MechWarrior Online. And it shows you where everybody dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, everybody uses that information to balance their maps and stuff like that because they want to determine, is everyone just funneling to the middle and ignoring most of the side routes, or all those different things, and how to better improve them, how to maybe build more terrain in the middle to split up the fight if that's your goal, or are you trying to funnel everybody in? So all that information is always gathered in those types of heat maps. The stuff, that data collection system has been going on for
long time.
Decade, like probably 15 years at this point.
So let me ask chat, are you frustrated with the fact that a lot of the content that when you jump into a game and you spend months and months and months and months and months grinding through and appreciating, and that's really where you fall in love with the game, is through all that early content? Does it frustrate you that in a lot of these games that early content becomes moot at some point? Or do you like the fact that you go through and you don't really have to ever worry about it again because you're always moving forward? It's a different type of gamer. You've got gamers that love that stuff, and then you've got gamers that are like, yeah, I don't give a rat's ass about the old stuff. I just want all the new stuff. I just want to keep going forward.
I'll also throw a little sidewinder in on this one, which is, what are your thoughts on So you have a game, for example, like um, WoW, which would basically said you could solo our whole entire content all the way to the max level, and then now all of a sudden you have to have friends because you didn't need any friends through your whole entire process, and you had no reason to make friends because you could just solo everything, and then you're done, and now you have to go find friends. Now it's great if you're already in a game community or whatever like that, but trying to, a lot of people kind of end their MMO experience at that point because they're like, oh, I have to join a guild. Well, I don't know anything about these people, so how about I just quit? You know,
So what does that do for your communities? And this is more at Malice and Taco. What does it do for your communities when you're trying to recruit people and
it's
all of
whatever.
your guild is gone beyond that initial vanilla content, but you're recruiting people that are just getting into the game. They don't have a home. And now they're in that
You
content
kind
and
of you kind of have to do it in stages because when I originally started Part-Time Heroes, this was in 2013, and our first game was Guild Wars 2. We did this about 6 months into Guild Wars' life. Um, when you're by yourself, like it was me and the co-founder Ryan, we didn't go like you kind of actually have to pick who you're recruiting. If you're a two-man guild, are you going to recruit a level 80 who wants to do end game content? No, they have zero interest in that. You kind of have to start with the newbies. And that's kind of what we did. We met people, we helped people get along, and we recruited them. Even though Ryan and I were both at max level and we could be doing end game content, the people we could go after were the new players, and we kind of helped those. So like we had like that initial wave of players where we recruited a bunch of people and they were in that low level. We kind of helped them get to end game, and eventually we did get a shift in the guild where instead of recruiting low level players, we were bringing in the higher level players who were like, okay, these guys are serious, I can actually do stuff with them. And sometimes you can get a guild that's big enough where you are constantly drawing in new players and you have people that in your guild that cater to that, or you go entirely into endgame stuff, which there are endgame guilds, there are leveling guilds. I mean, leveling guilds exist in Guild Wars 2 as well as World of Warcraft. They exist solely to help people level, and then there's the understanding of once that person gets to endgame, they move on. So, I mean, it depends on your group and it depends on what you're going after. And also, as a leader, you need to identify who your best recruits are. You need to know who you can fulfill. If you're just starting out and you have a small guild, you can't do anything for that max level player that wants to raid every week. You don't have that raiding group. You have nothing to offer them. So you shouldn't, unless you have a really good sell, you're probably not going to get them. And I kind of had that when going into Arcade. Like I had some Filipinos that wanted to join the guild, and it's like I have nothing to offer you. All my people are online during American hours, so what I can't do anything for you. As much as I want you to play games with us, I have nothing to offer you.
so we got people that say, I love that feeling at home. I don't like that infinite moving forward feel. I know people that hate it when new expansions come out and basically everything you've done in that previous content as far as stuff you've achieved and or gear that you've acquired becomes moot, which is a whole different issue.
A true World of Warcraft phenomenon.
Yep.
Yeah.
AU says, how do you get friends when a software title becomes abandonware? Play a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's abandonware, it's abandoned. I mean, if no one's playing, there's no one to be friends with.
Skippy says that if the storyline content is good, say like Guild Wars 2 or SWTOR, he really enjoys that early game experience.
Well, I mean, I I even had these exact same issues, not even in MMOs, but back when I was running Battlefield servers. When you're playing Battlefield 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, you're running off of vanilla maps. What do you do when an expansion comes out? Because people have to buy the expansion. So do you add the expansion maps to your rotation? Do enough people in your community have the expansion that you can put the maps on? And then again, if you do put them in, you're shutting people out of your community. So that is a very hard thing to do as a server operator, because the expansions literally do split your community. You either have you have to go with all new content, or you stick with vanilla. There's no middle ground there.
But I think a lot of communities are built around that sticking together and moving forward. And if you enjoy a game enough and they're putting out an expansion and the developer has done their job correctly and created enough hype for the game, I would say that the vast majority, if not all, of your community is going to get that expansion.
Yeah, but you probably see this with your own groups as well. Not everybody has the disposable income to constantly buy things. Like even people with families and everything like that, they don't have those $20. And in our case at Battlefield 4, sometimes we were offering to buy the new maps for other people, just that we could keep them with us as we moved on to add the new maps in. And
or I would do things like wait until they would finally make them free 6 months later or whatever like that.
Yeah. Which also I might add, like, that is a big frustrating thing that EA did with their games. In my opinion, I actually really liked the premium pass in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, because it's just like a flat $40 or whatever, and then you're going to get all the maps that come out. Whereas with Battlefield 2, and that came out like 2004, 2005, they came out with booster packs, like separate things you had to buy. At least with premium, it's one thing you buy and then you get everything, as opposed to Battlefield 2, where you have all the different booster packs and you have no idea what everyone's going to buy. And the problem you run into as well is if you have at least in Battlefield, if you have a server and it switches to an expansion map, it will kick everybody out that doesn't have the expansion. So even if your people, all your people in your community have the maps, if you do a map change and it boots everyone from the server, like all the pubbies and all the randoms from your server that don't own the map, well, then you just killed your server.
Right. So can I answer what Sahaku and Rahalden are talking about? Also, is and I don't almost go as far as saying it doesn't even need to technically be horizontal progression. It is something, though, that World of Warcraft...
Let me state the question for those that aren't reading it, though. Do you think that a horizontal progression MMO could work, and how would you like it to work? So that's the question.
And furthering on, it was also, if a game has horizontal progression, players get stronger by getting more options. Players who played for years are not that far ahead of players who started a month ago. And again, the conversation of what horizontal progression even is kind of wonky, because you can do that with vertical progression. The problem with as he's using World of Warcraft and ArcAge is that their vertical progression was leaps and bounds. You can have a Guild Wars 2 progression where that guy has the latest gear and the everything else, but he's only a little bit better than you. Like, at the end of the day, you can still go in there, and because of level scaling and doing all the other stuff, you can be a level 5 guy and running around in PvP, and sure, you're going to blow up a lot easier and stuff like that, but you're still involved in the game, and you're still playing against those people. And if you took 30 people that were all like level 1 and all hopped into Guild War 2, you could fight a group of max level guys. And
see, I'll channel Puka for a minute, and the opposite side of this, though please know that I agree with the idea of the horizontal progression and how we're stating it here. there are people out there that are going to say, no, absolutely. If I put in more time, why shouldn't I be exponentially more better? Sorry, Skippy, than you are.
Or better. That's a great word.
Well,
Drink more.
you're already going to be exponentially better because you have skill and you have knowledge, which a player that doesn't put the time will not have. Again, I'm coming from more of a background where, yes, I've played MMOs, but I've also played a lot of shooters. I've played a lot of games that require skill. When you put in time, you get skill, you get knowledge, you learn the maps, your aim and your muscle memory is better. So just by default, putting in time will make you better than someone that does not.
Well,
you don't need a 10% advantage to do that.
And also, sticking to the MMO, the person who puts in the time has more options, which is kind of where one of the people that mentioned options is. So if I have a bunch of money, we'll use Guild Wars 2, I have a bunch of high-end siege equipment. I have I could afford a leader pin. I could do all of these other things that give you access to a higher level of gameplay without significantly impacting my ability to raffle stomp other players so completely. So it's I have a larger toolbox as opposed to a one-hit wonder. And so that's just, it's what you gain. You're gaining options. You're not gaining absolute infinite power. You're gaining options to give you more directions to go. So that's still very, very powerful, and time and cash and all of those things in game make you so. So you're still gaining something for all the time you've played. Like, look at a game like Eve. There's no intrinsic difference between characters per se, but it's all about learning to be in a new ship. And so the more and more and more and more and more you learn, the more ships you have access to. The more you can go to a mining ship, a bomber, a dreadnought, or all different types of classes of ship. Well, but that takes time. Well, that doesn't mean that the starter player, even after 6 months, can be in a very competitive ship. He just happens to not have very many options, whereas somebody that's been playing for years has lots of options. Zaylen has fallen asleep. Yes.
Too much beer.
Whiskey and beer.
Linuxification.
Damn it.
Chug, chug, chug.
All right, Tuesday night, Malice, MMO Grind.
Yes, we have we have a guest.
Trev.
Trev, that's it.
So for those of you that are interested in building within Camelot Unchained, the guy who built Cherry Keep.
Yep, he will be our guest, and we'll be chit-chatting with him and hopefully walking through all of the fun parts of the cube system and what the current restrictions are and what the current limitations are.
So join us Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Again, for those of you that are new this week or coming back this week, we did change the time. We bumped it back, so it's a little bit easier to get to, and we've kind of reactivated hosting all of our stuff on YouTube. So if there's a previous episode that you are interested in that you did not get a chance to see, go check it out on YouTube. Everything should be up and live there, except for the ones that I failed to download and put on there. I'm sorry.
Failure.
Send me your hate mail later. That's fine. Send it care of Poison Taco, and we'll be good.
Also, did we want to bring up the fact that we're talking about moving the time frame for this show?
Oh, so yes, question for chat right now. And would it be more convenient for all of you watching if we bumped the time back to like 9:30, 10 o'clock Eastern? Don't all answer at once.
Takes a while. You gotta type.
9 Eastern would be better than 10. If you have a strong opinion on this, please hit Malice or I up in Discord. Skippy, I emptied my glass, and I don't really want to pour another one.
Basically, we're really viewing this like when we originally started this show, we were making a lot of concessions for the people that were actually participating in the show. As a lot of that has kind of we've shaken off some of the chaff, and the people who have decided to wander away from the project have done so. We now are in a position where we can move into a better time slot to include our West Coast friends and all the other type of stuff. So we'd like to include more people. It's kind of why we'd like to move it to the new hours. So hopefully everyone can come and join us. I really think that's kind of our best plan is to move our show a little bit later.
Yep.
If anybody has any problems with that, though, as Zaylin said, please give us contact and let us know why we should keep it at the time we're at.
So there's a link to our Discord down below the video here in the little panels. You can get on there, contact Malice, myself, let us know what your thoughts are. Otherwise, I think what we're probably looking to do is we'll make an announcement in Discord saying when it's actually going to start. Next week, there will be no Town Hall and no MMO grind. Just so you know, we're kind of taking a break. We're not machines. Well, Poison Taco might be.
Translation, Zaylin's going on a trip. And he's a tech guy, and he isn't going to be around to hit the buttons. And so that's what it really comes down to.
Otherwise, we'll see you guys Tuesday night.
We'll
see you guys Tuesday
I have
night.
no emotions. I am a machine.
There you go. He is the machine. Thanks all for coming. Tuesday night, 10 o'clock. We will chit-chat with Trev about what it's like to build with Cube and in Camelot Unchained.